So just a reminder, there's a little blue button. Hit the blue button that just confirms that you know that we're recording. And you will not be in the recording unless you talk, really, I think is the only way that that happens. So today we're going to talk about expanding interests and leisure activities. And I'm happy that some of my lovely Bloom staff are on today because the idea for this kind of came from an observation I did at one of your locations over the summer, working with a lovely individual who is doing really great, but has really limited interests and not really interests that are shared with their peers in that setting in particular. So that's what kind of like sparked the idea to do this. But there's lots of research, so it was pretty easy to kind of put together the full PowerPoint on it. See if I can. Where's click advance? On my screen. Doesn't want to change. I don't need to do that every time. Maybe I have to. Can you guys still see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So just a couple quick reminders. If you do unmute at some point to ask a question or to give input, do not use any client information that includes initials because we do kind of post these semi-publicly. You must complete the post test. So Ashley will send you the link. You have to do that in order to get credit. And just a general reminder for all trainings, it's only as good as how you use the information. So if you listen to me and say, that was really great, and then that's where you leave it, then, you will not benefit from the information. Oh, didn't work that time. Oh, there we go. So we want to kind of start by defining what is leisure time. So a quick Google AI result just defines it as activities that people do in their free time, either alone or with others, to occupy themselves and have fun. Pretty straightforward, but not super well defined. Uh, this is not going to be good once I get to the actual parts where I need to have things advance. So give me a 1 second while I try to see if I can get this to work better. Because I can only advance right now. I can only advance the slides by tabbing out to my my other window. Let me try it like this. All right, there we go. All right, so thank you for bearing with me there. Now I don't know what it's going to record. So do that. Okay, there we go. Classic view. So this is from the Triad website about teaching classrooms. So this kind of broke it out a little bit more specifically. So it broke it into time, activities, and state of mind. So as time, it's time free of obligations. So demands, we would kind of call them in our kind of general kind of ABA language, and activities that people engage in during their free time, right? So pretty similar. And also have like this perceived freedom, choice, and they have a positive, perceived positive effect. So this is all really important kind of as we go through some of this, because we're going to talk about some of the ethics of teaching leisure skills and adding interests, and kind of not just letting a person just have the interests and leisure activities that they currently have. And there is going to be a time by definition where we're going to need to teach these new things, and they're not initially going to be leisure activities. So it's not just like you add a leisure activity and they immediately like it. So I want to kind of recognize that the first step of this is teaching new things that will be demanding, at least at first. So to So why are we talking about this? Why is this important? So the first thing I wanted to do was to pull up the DSM criteria. So right here in A1, okay, on the DSM criteria for the autism diagnosis, reduced sharing of interests. Okay, so this really kind of is part and parcel with the autism diagnosis, is that there is a lack of interest repertoire of leisure skill repertoire, which then leads to this reduced sharing of interests. You can't share interests when you only have one or none or very few. And then B, both 2 and 3 both had related areas. So this insistence on sameness, these kind of ritual behavior. So I like the same thing, and that's what I'll always like. I can only like this. So you can have the sameness and the rigidity, and highly restricted, fixated interests. They both kind of feed into each other. But right there, you know, off the bat, we pretty clearly see that this is a feature of autism according to the DSM. So some kind of like offshoots of that, some expansions on that we kind of see throughout the lifetime and across the diagnosis. So autistic individuals are less likely to be involved in social activities, according to now. Some of the data is always pretty old because it takes a while to put together. And this comes from a 2016 survey. So you can kind of, decide either way on that because that was pre-COVID, right? So the world was a little bit different then. I'm not sure if I had to take a guess whether I think that these statistics got better or worse for the autistic population. But I would bet the farm, literally, that's funny. I would bet the farm that, that the difference still exists between the neurotypical population and the autism population. Less likely to have friends, less likely to be employed. And this is a current statistic. So 85% of the autism population is unemployed, which, when we look at this huge volume of people, that's a lot of people who are not working, and more likely to be unhappy, to feel lonely, to be suicidal, to be depressed, to be diagnosed with a myriad of other diagnoses. So, how does that fit into what we're talking about? Maybe not directly, but we do know that these increased leisure skills have shown a direct decrease on stereotypy and passivity. So passivity is basically just kind of doing nothing. We know that with having these extra skills or these extra activities and interests, there's kind of more chances for being involved in social activities, in connecting to other people. So, we don't have any studies that show specifically directly that, if you give a person more leisure skills, they will, they'll be more likely to be employed. So that's kind of like, kind of drawing kind of some guesswork, but I think it's valid. And we know that, there's this cool Dunlap study that I want to read more about. It didn't directly completely relate to this, but it showed that, these showing varying tasks presents to higher rates of responding. So basically, if you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, the responding starts to drop off. So if you have kids who only have 1 or 2 things that they're interested in or they're able to do, their responding is going to be low. This is that data that I kind of referenced before. I think is really interesting because it's not maybe as stark as maybe you would have guessed. Maybe it's surprising. There's some places where the autism population is higher than the neurotypical population, and then you see kind of as they hit close to transition age, that's where it really seems to drop off. And I don't know for sure. Oh, it's 2018, a little bit better, but still pre-COVID. I'm not sure, but I would get, and I don't think that they posited a guess about this, but I think that families often kind of push their kids to be in lots of extracurriculars, even on the autism spectrum until kind of that age when, they start to kind of, it gets the response effort is more difficult. But so just, some interesting statistics. So what's wrong with Sesame Street? So during the autism conference this year, I can't even remember which presentation it was. It might have been like the keynote speaker. But this came up. This person was talking about a family they worked with, a child they worked with, and they were working on increasing this kid's their repertoire of interests, right? Which is exactly what I'm encouraging you to do. And the kind of point of this story, though, was a challenge of this, where this child who was I believe like in their late teenage years, or kind of growing past where Sesame Street would be considered like a typical age, kind of interest. And so they were kind of trying to phase out Sesame Street and replace it with more, age appropriate kind of interests. And the speaker kind of recalled this kind of confrontation, maybe not confrontation, but this discussion with the parents, where the parents were like, "What's wrong with Sesame Street? Sesame Street makes my kid happy. Sesame Street is, fun and, educational and has good values." So, the argument here that, the speaker kind of said like, "Oh, this really changed my outlook. It really changed the way that I approach kids. I no longer, try to get them to like other things." And this really stuck with me. Because there are some things wrong with Sesame Street. Not as a as a show, or a set of values or anything like that, but the problem to me was that this was an exclusionary interest. And it really kind of limits a person's interactions. So there's nothing wrong with Sesame Street. What's wrong is that this individual really only seems to like Sesame Street. And I think maybe the problem with the intervention was they were trying to phase out Sesame Street to add new things. So, my kind of disclaimer here is, as we go on, I just want to add things. We can keep Sesame Street, keep whatever it is they like, as long as it's, legal. But add things. So let me kind of continue along this path. So in my groups, I refer to social bridges. So these are the things that connect you to other people. So things that you have in common with other people, usually activities that you engage in, or interests that you have, are these social bridges. So here we have our best buddy SpongeBob. So we're gonna kind of hang out with SpongeBob for a little bit. So SpongeBob has a very similar kind of what we might consider childish interest to Sesame Street. So that's where we get Sesame Street in parentheses. So he loves Super Weenie Hut Juniors. Okay. He's part of that. I have this little thing here that my wife got me at one point. I have a Super Weenie Hut Juniors lifetime member thing. I love SpongeBob, if you haven't noticed. So what is the problem with this? Well, this interest only bridges SpongeBob to other people who are interested in Super Weenie Hut Juniors. Okay. Which is typically children, right? So, working with autistic adults, I often see, Disney is kind of the big one, but, there's a lot of these kind of, Thomas and Barney and things like this. This does, when they're in a group of other autistic adults who also like Disney or things like that, it does bridge them to those other people. But generally speaking, it really bridges them to people who are much younger, which could be really problematic with our adults. who don't have the best kind of judgment skills or ability to pick up on social cues. So if they're really gravitating towards people who share interests and they're gravitating towards these very young people, that's problematic. So this is kind of the first reason that, I'm arguing we got to expand these bridges. Okay, so here's another example. So here we have SpongeBob loves jellyfishing, right? So jellyfishing is a sport in which you try to net jellyfish. It's exactly what it sounds like, right? So this connects him really well to his best friend, Patrick, right? So that's say a really good one, So him and his best friend are able to do this together. They're able to talk about it. They're able to go to the jellyfish convention or jellyfishing convention, etc. But it doesn't connect him to a lot of other people, Mr. Krabs, Squidward, and of course David Hasselhoff. Who this only makes sense if you've seen the SpongeBob movie. But yeah, so this one really, really valuable interest that connects to one person only connects them to one person. There's other people jellyfishing too, so it connects them to them. But what we really want to do is we want to have these well-rounded individuals with these repertoires of leisure skills and interests, right? So he's got jellyfishing that connects him to Patrick. Okay, we teach him, to play this, the Flying Dutchman's treasure hunt, which Mr. Krabs loves. So he's got, he's connected to that person. He can still like Super Weenie Hut Juniors. That's okay, right? Because that connects him maybe to his, his little cousin or his, nephew or whatever it might be, right? No need to get rid of that. We kind of get him into shopping and going to the mall. That connects him to Pearl, so that's another connection. And then we teach him to like fine dining and breathing, which of course connects him to Squidward. There's a lot of deep cuts here for SpongeBob fans, so hopefully some of you are giggling and get some of the references, but without getting it, you can still see that multiple interests connect you to multiple people. The more bridges you have, and I also would say some bridges are stronger than others, like jellyfishing is pretty specific, and not a lot of people are going to be into that, whereas, fine dining is a pretty common kind of thing that people are into. All right, so you get your first key phrase or word. So today, I'm going to, at the end, there are 3 podcasts that I listened to in preparing for this. So I'm going to tell you the 3 kind of people that do this. So your first key word person is Dr. Mary Barbera. If you can't, like, it doesn't matter if you spell it right or wrong. The questions are multiple choice, so just make sure you have it as close as possible. So your first code word is Dr. Mary Barbera. She does the Turn Autism Around podcast. And I can't remember which episode it was, but she talks to Steve Ward, who has this really cool book that I forgot to add a picture of to the training. So I'll show it here. It's What You Need to Know About Motivation and Teaching Games. I think maybe we have it at the after school program, but really cool book. I've started reading it again. I think I read it a long time ago. But yeah, so code word 1, Dr. Mary Barbera. All right, so let's kind of expand on what we were just saying. So what are the benefits? And I have a picture of Dan and Eugene Levy here, and I had a purpose. This is like the first picture I added to the slideshow, and I can't remember the exact reason. I have some guesses, but I can't remember the exact reason why I included this slide or this picture on this slide. But what great dudes. So either way. So we talked about before, studies have shown that with increased leisure skills, stereotypy seems to go down, or stereotypy does go down in the people that they research. So that's really interesting. They did a lot of like hypothesizing that the function of stereotypy is often the same as play. So if you get them engaging in play, they often, now we've seen a lot from the autistic community that stereotypy is often a more of a regulation kind of thing. So, again, this is a way to, without punishing stereotypy, you might see it go down by teaching them other skills, which is really kind of where we want to be, right? We don't want to be necessarily stopping things directly, because if we teach the skill and it goes down, it's a win-win situation. You get more chances for social connection. Those are your bridges that I just talked about, right? So the more things you're interested in, the more people you can connect to. It increases independence, right? So if they're able to occupy themselves in a more, independent way, that's going to give them things to do, which by its nature then allows the caregivers some relief. If the kid can occupy themselves in the next room, or somewhere else, the parents can, they can watch a TV show, they can do what it is that they would like to do. So it increases that. They have more activities they can share with the caregiver. So this is one of my favorite D&D stories from doing D&D groups. Was that one of the fathers, after we'd been doing it for a little while, said, like, I've really never had anything in common with my son. Like, we just didn't have things to do together. I just never really knew what to talk about. But I played D&D when I was younger, and now he plays it. So now we play together and we can talk about it. So it created this cool, caregiver child situation where they have something they can do together, which is probably where the Dan and Eugene kind of ended up, because they act together and they do a lot of things together. So that's probably where it came from, I think. It increases problem solving skills. We're going to kind of talk about that a little bit as we go, but the more kind of things you can engage them in, the more problem solving skills they can be generating and learning. You give them, especially if you're doing leisure activities that are correlated with stress relief and things like that. So yoga, mindfulness, exercise, getting outside. A lot of these things are interacting with people. Most of these leisure skills kind of fall in that area. So you're now giving them kind of an outlet for stress, which is fantastic. And it just expands our potential reinforcer list. So if our ultimate goal is to, move away from candy and cookies and goldfish crackers, over time, if that's our intention, and to replace that with more kind of natural kind of interaction based, or social based kind of reinforcers, then we need to add more of those things. Because if they've only got one, they only like the swings. You can't swing when it's raining unless they've got an indoor swing, but it's not really the same thing, right? You can't, they might get tired of the swing. So that's a satiation. So the more things you have, you've got a bigger menu of things that they enjoy. You can move them to different things. So all of these things kind of allow for that. So how do we do this, right? So hopefully at this point I've bought some or most of you into this idea of needing to increase interests and leisure skills. So my first question is, and just throw an answer in the chat, like, is it possible to teach someone to like something they don't currently like? You can unmute and say it, or throw it in the chat, whatever's easier. Is it possible? Can we teach people new things?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Julie says yes. Jeff says sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Yana says yes.
All right.
Molly says yes.
The good news is yes, it is true. It is possible.
Yes.
Otherwise, we'd all just be liking the same things forever, right? So that's the good news. It is possible. So question number 2, is it ethical to teach someone to like something that they don't currently like?
I say yes, because it's not that you're going to force them. You're going to engage them.
Okay, like that. Other opinions?
Looks like yes. Brandy says yes.
Okay. I think,
Teaching doesn't have to be forced, Jeff says.
okay.
Holly says yes if done correctly, not forcing.
Oh, okay, good. Love the caveat. Yeah, this was kind of one I really think it depends, right? The classic BCBA answer, but it really does depend on how you do it and a lot of the things that we're kind of talking about. How do we do it? We're going to talk about that. That's what's coming up. And how do we know what to teach? That's coming up too, right? So how do we turn Michael from not liking it into liking it? Well, let's find out. So first of all, let's talk about what we need to consider when we're deciding what to teach them, right? And this is semi in like from most important to less important. So the first thing that we want to consider um, is what do they gravitate towards, right? So what things currently kind of ring their bell, right? That's not the right saying. Maybe it is. What currently do they seem to enjoy or approach or like? And so that doesn't help us create new interests directly, right? Like if they're gravitating towards it, then it's probably a current interest, but we can, see which things, if you put out, choices, if you're in a place where that thing, what do they like orient towards, but also what can we expand to from what they already like? So, okay, I know that they like animals, so maybe they would like, helping at an animal shelter or something like that, right? And then almost as important, or maybe more important, is what do they flee from? What seems aversive to them, right? So if by contrast the animals seem to terrify them, right, that would tell me that an animal shelter would be probably a really terrible, kind of thing to try to teach in them because, that's they obviously seem to not like that. Next question is what's readily available, right? So what's at hand that they can engage in. So, you might think like, oh, it'd be really awesome to teach them like skydiving, but like how often can you skydive? How expensive is that? Where can you do it? So it's like really limiting, right? So if they already like it, that's one thing, but like, if it's not readily available, then it's not super easy to teach or to have, kind of the repetitions that you need. What's the family like? What are they into? What might connect them? That D&D story, with that, that was inadvertent. I didn't do that on purpose, but you guys want to be more purposeful, right? Like if you can teach a kid to like to watch football and their parents watch football every weekend, guess what? You've created this really cool, situation where they can kind of do something together. You think about what's age appropriate, right? That's not to break them of stuff they already like. This is really about teaching them new things. So we're going to teach them a new thing. I wouldn't pick something that's, for much younger kids. I would pick things that are more aligned with their current age. Uh, what can you teach easily? Right. So something that won't take a lot of effort or materials. What are their peers doing? I would really like to see that kind of higher up on the list. So it's not actually, from most to least, but that's really where I need you guys to be detectives when you're out in classrooms, in daycares, things like that. Like you need to be seeing like, okay, what are the other kids doing? What are they wearing? What are they talking about? What are they playing? What are they watching? We need to have that information, not for ourselves, but so that we can work more effectively with the kids that we're engaged with. And what's likely to lead to future success? What's going to set them up? So you know, like maybe Sesame Street, maybe they don't like Sesame Street and they're 4, right? So you're like, oh, let's teach them to like Sesame Street. But by the time you teach them to like Sesame Street, now they're 7 or 8 or 10. Now you've, like if it's going to take that long, it would be smarter to teach something that's going to kind of last longer. So instead of Sesame Street, maybe Spider-Man, because Spider-Man you can like kind of for the duration of your life and kind of connect to other people a bit more effectively. All right, so we've got, I think, 4 or 5 procedures that from my experience, from the research, that kind of tell us how to make this happen. So the first one is just direct teaching, right? So if you want a kid to have a new skill, you're probably going to have to teach it directly. You're not just going to say, hey, you should paint, and say, go paint, right? We're teachers of skills. So we can use a whole bunch of the things from our tool belt to teach new skills. So we can do chaining, right? So I want them to do puzzles. I could do, forward chaining. I could have them put in the first piece and then I do the rest. I could do backwards chaining. I could put in all the pieces except for one, have them put in the last, and then provide reinforcement. So I can teach, because all of these things you can task list, right? Or task analyze. That's the word. So you can kind of figure out what the steps are, and you can teach them a step at a time. Okay. We can do prompting, just kind of prompt them through it. Like, okay, try this, do this, use this, modeling. And we got all types of modeling, right? So you can directly model it for them. If you're in a classroom or a daycare, you can get the peers to do it, right? So you can have them show it. A lot of times the peers want to help out. And you can use video modeling, right? So, I like board games, but I hate learning new board games. But now, oftentimes, when you open up a new board game, they have the giant, really thick set of rules. But they often also have like a video link where you can watch the video of someone showing you how to play. And it's so much more valuable to me than trying to read the book and trying to figure that out. And they often say, like, okay, do this step and then hit next, right? So you're like setting it up together. Video modeling has a ton of research on it. And there's video models of lots of, like, almost everything. And if there's not, you can make it, right? They will watch a video of you showing them how to do something, in many cases over you doing it directly. I use it in my groups all the time. Visual schedules, we do this, we do this, we do this. Social stories, Miss Rachel loves playing blah, blah, blah. This is how she does it. This is who she likes to do it with. And Miss Rachel, I was just talking to Jess the other day, like, her kids are learning new things just from watching Miss Rachel, right? This is kind of her thing. So yeah. The next thing we can do is we can modify, right? So if we want to teach something new, we really need to often be modifying what they're doing. We're not going to start with the as rules as written version of the games that we want them to play, or the activities we want them to do. We're going to modify it so that it's easier to enjoy, easier to do. So we're going to kind of simplify it so that it works. And all of these examples, I'm pretty sure, all of these examples were taken from Rose Griffin's podcast. She also did a training that went even into more detail on it at the autism conference. She has a really cool podcast. I'm actually going to be on that podcast. We're recording that next week, so I'm really excited about that. But yeah, so if you see that link at the bottom, she talks about all of these things kind of in depth. But so she has her kids play Uno, but she takes out all the extra cards, the draw cards, the reverse cards, the skip cards. She takes all those out and she only uses the colors. And basically she puts down all four of the colors. Four, I think. She puts down all four of the colors, and it's really almost just becomes a turn-taking activity. Right. So like they both have a handful of cards, or they take turns drawing and they just put it on the right stack. So it's really turn taking and it's sorting is really what that kind of boils down to. But those are kind of the initial key elements of the game of Uno as you kind of learn it. So modified Uno, connect four. They're not getting four in a row. They're just taking turns putting their chips in, right? You're teaching turn taking, you're doing something together. She does matching, but instead of having the cards flipped over, she's got one set of, you got the cards and then the matches. She puts the cards all down face up, and you take turns drawing a card and you just match it to the right one. It's just matching, really just matching in a field, but taking turns. So it creates that game. Scrabble, but you don't have to like connect it to a previous word. You can do it anywhere on the board. And then these two I really enjoy, right? So she does red light, green light, but instead of saying red light, green light, she says stop and go, right? And why is that so valuable? You wouldn't be able to play at camp, because at camp they're going to play red light, green light. But if you get them practicing repeatedly stop and go, that's going to help them in their real life when they're running towards a street and someone says stop, right? That kind of carries over. And same thing with hot or cold, hotter color, Rob. I looked at this 1,000 times. Hotter, colder, right? Or warmer, colder. However you grew up playing it. You like hide something, you put something somewhere, and you say hotter, hotter, colder. But instead saying yes, 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 no, no. So again, like shaping up those words that they're going to use. But you're playing these games that they could be playing kind of across the board. Next one, super valuable pairing, right? So this is where we often, kind of build up. We like a lot of things because we get to do them with people that we like. So you're combining something that they already like, an already preferred item, and you're connecting it to something you want them to learn. So I'm going to play music while we're hiking, so that we have, this chance of building up this walking or hiking or nature or whatever it is that you're doing. They like what's that guy in the bottom left? Coco Melon. That's it. So they really like Coco Melon, but they're like 8 or 9 or 15 or 20. So instead of trying to get rid of Coco Melon, we're going to play Coco Melon and Ninja Turtles, right? So we get both action figures, and we play with them together. Knitting and Netflix, if that's not already a thing, it should be. It's something certainly that my wife does. And then doing work while eating, right? So that's we often combine eating with lots of things that make it, more valuable. So you can pair up things by taking those already established reinforcers and combining them with things that you want. And so we use this idea in this idea of expanding play. So really the previous mini training from a couple months ago on play routines and play chains really talked a lot about expanding play. And expanding play leads to more interests. And you can kind of do this really intentionally, right? So you can take Thomas, right, which is is not as big of a thing for our kids as it used to be, but it's still out there. And you can turn that into building Lego train sets, or, playing with just regular toy trains or regular toy train sets. Or there are, I can't remember his name, but there are plenty of Transformers that turn into trains. And if you haven't seen the new Transformers movie, it's fantastic, whether you like Transformers or not. Just a, segue, but it's really good. But so you can take this interest and find things that are similar. And you could still play with the Thomas the Tank Engine toy with the Transformer on the regular train set. And I put this picture of all of Andy's toys because I think that Andy is the perfect exemplar of a kid who has paired multiple interests together. He's playing with, Bo Peep and little kid toys and, more bigger kid toys. He's got them all playing together, right? So instead of and lots of kids often get rigid. My own kids were really rigid about this. Like, oh, I'm playing with Star Wars. Oh, I'm playing with G.I. Joe. But if you combine them together, you start to associate all those things, and you can start kind of expanding those interests. So, be like Andy. The next step is probably kind of a more, might be a more go-to kind of, although I like the pairing idea, but it's not going to be possible. And you're not always going to be able to pair things together. Music is one of the easier ones to pair because you can play music while you're doing just about anything, but other things are a lot more difficult. So we can go with our like first then kind of learning, right? So first we're going to do something that we want you to learn. So first we're going to start with a target, and then we'll do the thing that you prefer. So it becomes like the gate that you have to go through to get to the thing that you like, So first we cook, then we eat. First we do a puzzle, then you get Swedish Fish. First we listen to Chapel Roan, and then we can watch Barney, right? If you don't know who Chapel Roan is, that's her down there at the bottom right. And she just blew up like over the last year or so. So Not going to say she's the new Taylor Swift. She's more like the new Lady Gaga. And sometimes Lindsay likes to pretend to be Chapel Roan, just, to spoil her secrets. But hopefully Lindsay will be Chapel Roan for Halloween this year. So this can be a really effective way to kind of start shaping up these things. And our goal with all of these things is not to have to continue this contingent reinforcement. We're picking things really kind of specifically so that they end up contacting reinforcement. So eventually they just like Chapel Roan. They just like cooking. They like doing puzzles. That's the goal here. That's a really important kind of part. The goal is to get them to like new things. So they're new leisure activities. Going all the way back to like the second slide, it's not a leisure activity unless they want to do it. But it's going to start out not feeling that way. But it will over time. That's what pairing means, right? Is that the second stimulus gains the qualities of the first stimulus over time. And then I think this is this is our last kind of intervention to do this, and really important, right? And goes back to what I was just saying. So this perseverance and consistency is really key. So here we have Sam I Am trying to convince whatever the other guy's name is to like green eggs and ham, right? It took the entire length of the book, all of these exemplars, all of these pairings, all of these chances, until he finally realized, I do like green eggs and ham. I will eat them anywhere, right? That is your mission here, right? Is to stay, to persevere and be consistent. Now, if he was pretty averse to it. He was really trying to get away from it. So I would not be this, this insistent. But, over time, you will see things, you start to like things just by nature of kind of being exposed to them. So these I just took out ChatGPT just to kind of show you how easy, if you're like, oh, I have no idea what I should teach. I don't even know what is a 5-year-old supposed to be doing? What would be good ideas? Well, ChatGPT, friends, is your friend. So I did no, changing or adding, or like if I knew, like, okay, this is for a specific kid, so I'm going to take these results, I'm going to say, how about for a kid who likes being outdoors, or how about a kid who likes bright colors? So you narrow it. Chat GPT, the more questions you ask it, the more it learns, the better response it's going to give you. But I said, give me 20 leisure skills that would be beneficial to an autistic 5-year-old. Here's your list, right? You don't have to write this down. Just ask ChatGPT yourself. It's free. Get the app or go to the website. 10-year-old gives a list that increases what's the difficulty level. I asked a 16-year-old, right? Right? Adds new things, all kinds of, and some of these things you might think like public speaking, ridiculous, right? Okay, yeah, cross that one off. Say, hey, can you replace this one and give me a different one? You can ask for 50 or 100 or 1,000. It might not give you 1,000. I don't know. I've never asked for that many, but you could ask for more. Say, hey, give me 5 more, or you can really refine these. Here's your second code word, dear friends. So ABA Inside Track is your second, podcast. It's 3 people, Diana and Rob, not me, and what's the other woman's name? Gina, do you remember?
No.
So there's three people, 3 hosts to this show. Gina and I find them a little bit difficult to listen to, but they do have some good episodes, and they have one about this. So your second code word is ABA Inside Track. That's the name of the podcast. And then I asked for a 20-year-old, and it gave me, so this could be really valuable to kind of come up with ideas. I asked, what are 5 pop culture topics that 16-year-olds are interested in, right? And this gives, if you look at this, it's fairly specific, but you could make it even more specific. You could say, give me some more video games that 16-year-olds are interested in. You could really kind of it lists. So again, this is where it's important for you guys to know some of this stuff, because down under gaming, it lists Among Us, right? Which is not super cool anymore. That was kind of big during the pandemic. It's still around, it still exists, but it's kind of seen its day come and go. So you do have to be, aware of what works and not. So let's apply some of this knowledge. We've got 12 minutes left. So we're going to go through some scenarios, and I want you to use the information that you have and the information that you've just learned to kind of think about what we're talking about. So your first example, your first question is, which would you choose to teach? So we've got horseback riding and we've got building Legos. And you don't get any information other than between these two, which would you choose to teach a learner as a new leisure activity? So I'm not giving you age or location or anything like that. So all you know is you've got an autistic learner, you want to teach them a new leisure skill or interest, and your choices are horseback riding or building Legos. Which one are we going to go with?
Building Legos, more accessible. Legos.
Yeah, I say Legos too.
Accessible and cheaper. Legos seems to be the consensus.
Yeah, you
Horseback
guys,
riding is limited.
limited, right? Like, where can you guys might not even have places you can horseback ride. Like, if we knew more about the kid and we know that they have horses, but they just don't ride them, right? Or like their parents are avid horseback riders, right? That might, if I knew more about this kid, but for any of you who might someday take the BCBA exam or the RBT exam, all the information is in the question. All you knew was that. So yeah, Lego building 100%. All right, so let's make it a little bit more difficult, right? So what would you choose to teach? You've got Legos, you've got Connects there at the top right, you've got a marble run at the bottom left, and you've got a puzzle at the bottom right. A terrible puzzle, which appears to be nothing but white pieces, which I hear is an actual thing. But just think about it, puzzles in general. Don't think about an all white puzzle. So this one, I'll give you a hint here. This one does not have just a direct answer. So like, what are some thoughts when you look at these four things? Which one are you going to teach?
I say all of them.
Oh, I love it. That's a great answer. All of them is a good answer. But what if I have to pick
Anything
one?
with building, Michelle says.
What does Michelle say?
Anything with building.
Yeah, these are all building. Yep. Yep. What else would I consider? What else do I want to think about?
The puzzle is more rigid and structured. It can also be increased in difficulty and tailored to the learner's interests.
Who said that?
Yeah.
Jeffrey. I award you an inspiration point, dear sir. What an answer. I didn't think about that.
Holly says, without context all, I would consider age and pica risk. Marble Run has a small ball. Ashley says puzzle, it can be done as an adult also. Puzzle, Brandy says puzzle is more linear thinking and not as many opportunities to be creative.
You guys. That's just perfect. I'm gonna leave that. I'm not even gonna say anything else about it. I just love that. I mean, you could do like a preference assessment in this case and put like buckets of each of these things out and see which one they gravitate towards. But yeah, you guys won me over. All right, so how about this? What do I want to consider if I'm choosing between horseback riding, skiing, or bowling?
Bowling.
Yeah, I go with bowling.
Pretty
It's more
accessible.
readily available.
Yep. Yep.
Bowling is more widely accessible, Holly says.
Mm-hmm. So this is one where, I'd want to know more about the family, right? Want to know about where they live. Do they even live in a place where skiing is even an option? But yeah, bowling is probably your best answer.
Brandy says physical limitations also play a role.
Yes.
Jeff
Oh my
says
gosh.
bowling is more easily available, less skill-based to participate, but can be difficult to master. Alexis says family and availability, also risk assessment.
Yes. And no, not you. Stop. Alexa, stop. So yeah, all those things, right? I love that, and all these things do have accommodations available, right? But bowling really has, you get bumpers, you get the little ramp
Yeah.
thing, you got different size balls, whereas like, horseback riding, I think they have like harnesses and things like that, skiing, but there's a lot of limitations. Good. All right, so now we're going to up the difficulty of this activity, right? So now we're saying you start with a kid whose primary interest is light up spinny toys, right? So what I want you to do is, what could you expand this to? What are some near or far things that you could kind of build this interest into additional interests? I started with a tough one.
Ashley says disco dance party.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's good.
yeah, love that. Disco dance party. Good, get lights that are similar and have them dance. Love it.
Mhm.
Mhm. Jeff says disco ball, LED lights.
Yep. There's lights on a lot of stuff, right? Pinball is a lot like, if you ever seen like a
Pinball.
pinball machine, There's video games that are like pinball. Other ideas?
Light bright toys. Oh, Jeff also,
Yes.
yeah. Making pictures with lights. Jeff also said video games with fast light changes. Yeah.
Yeah. Dance Dance Revolution. There is an article in that ABA Inside Track talks about, where they teach the kids to play Guitar Hero, a lot like this.
Oh, yeah.
Brandy says programmable lights, games where you follow the lights. That's fun.
Yes.
Flashlights to utilize for different activities, Michelle says.
My gosh, you guys are good. All right. How about,
Simon, yeah, Simon's fun.
oh, Simon? Yes,
Jeff said
Simon is,
Simon,
is
yeah.
practically that game. All right. What might you expand a love of Google Maps to? We're going to go into kind of lightning round here because I got a few more examples.
You have 5 minutes.
Thanks. What can I turn Google Maps into?
Geocaching,
Geocaching.
cartography, I believe
Yep.
that
Making
cities
maps.
and sports teams, Pokemon Go, scavenger hunt, treasure hunt.
Oh my gosh, you guys are beautiful. I love it. All right. How can I get from Coco Melon to Avengers?
Physical maps or books, also on the previous one.
Love it. How do I get from Coco Melon to Avengers? Any ideas?
Make them superheroes.
Yeah. Have them play superheroes. Yep.
Mhm.
Make Coco Melon superheroes. Put
Right.
capes and things on the Coco Melons. There's probably an episode where they pretend to be superheroes.
Mhm.
I could also do something like this.
Use action figures together.
Yes, combine. There we go.
Mhm.
You can pair it up.
Transition to
Click else.
musicals first, then superhero cartoons.
So you do something like this, right? So Paw Patrol is kind of like Coco Melon, but getting closer to Avengers.
Mhm.
Uh,
Oh, mhm.
what is it? PJ
PJ
Masks,
Masks.
right? These are like, super cartoony. Then Ladybug and Cat Noir are starting to get a little bit more CGI, a little bit more grown up. Into the Spider-Verse is even closer. You see where my brain went here? You guys follow kind of that chain? So sometimes
Mhm.
it takes a lot of, like gradual kind of approximations to get to something. But Avengers, something you can like your whole lifetime. How can I get from a love of road signs to hiking?
I Spy hikes.
Yes,
Mhm.
Holly said that.
Dr. Holly, killing it. Other ideas?
Make a trail map, follow signs on the trail. Alexis.
Yes. Burke's After School representing.
Brandy scavenger hunt.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. So you can incorporate a lot of these things together. You might not even, like, your brain doesn't always think of these things. You think like, oh, they like road signs, like, and that's like, who's going to share that interest with you? It's really restrictive. But if you can turn it into hiking, that's a pretty big thing. Okay. How can we get from a kid who loves flushing the toilet or just toilets to the super awesome guy down here playing the keyboard?
They look like the same guy, like
I
that.
know, right? I thought so too.
Sound effects play, Jeff said.
Yes. You could change all the keys to make flushing noises, different pitched flushing noises. Yep. I mean that, the flusher is like a button,
Sound effects, boards that gradually increase the number of keys, transition to button pushing, then increase the number of buttons.
Brilliant. You guys are killing it. That was a hard one. All right. So this I believe is, go ahead.
Pairing the flushing with the music.
Yeah, pairing. Oh my God, play music when they flush the toilet. You guys are great. All right, so our final slide here is how do we know if this is successful? So how do we know if what we're doing is working? Okay, so the first measure is that's measuring is that's what the picture is. So the first measure here is over time, after time has passed, are they starting to choose the new leisure activities? Okay, so and you can start assessing this right away, like while you're teaching it on day 2, right? So you've started kind of teaching for them to do puzzles or them to walk or whatever it might be, and you start adding that to their choice board. And do they choose it? Well, that's a pretty good indicator that this has become a a a leisure skill. That's what we want to see. It's most often it's not going to happen right away. It's going to take time. Okay, but after time, over time, are they choosing it? Are they adding more without dropping others? So that's important. So because of the rigidity, so okay, I taught you to like this, and now I don't like anything else. That shows an error in our teaching. If they're gaining 5 to drop 1, then our net value is still positive. Okay, but if they're gaining 1 and losing 1, right, or gaining 1 and losing 2, that could be problematic. That's a kind of a team discussion, but we want to see, like, are we still net positive? Overall number, same thing, is it greater? And are they relating more effectively to their peers? These are the things we want to consider when we say, is this working? Okay, that'll kind of tell us. And your final code word is Rose Griffin. So she's the one that I talked about on the modifying board games slide. So Rose Griffin, can't remember what her podcast is called, but she's a speech and language pathologist and a BCBA. So she has a lot of episodes, really great. Dr. Barbera, all 3 of these podcasts have a lot. So our final slide is just the references. I would, if you could only watch or listen to one, I would read this first one, this 2008 article on the development of interests in children with autism. It's really, really good, and it talks exactly about what we're talking about today. So happy that I found this one, and then I used that one to find others. And then if you're going to if you could have time for 2 things, then the second one I would say is listen to that episode of Autism Outreach is the name of Rose Griffin's podcast, episode 53 on modified social and leisure skills. So these are a lot of great references that you guys can access. So hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully you got your brains thinking. And remember, the only way that this is really valuable is if you take it and you put it into practice. Start writing it into treatment plans. Start building it into your treatment packages to expand interests and leisure skills. All right. I'm going to stop the recording.